Hello everyone, I am Lavinia. I am a co-founder and a learning architect at Offbeat, a learning space dedicated to L&D professionals. I'm recording this video because on May 12th, we are celebrating 4 years of Offbeat. So we thought it would be a good and nice idea to tell you a bit about what we've learned in the past 4 years of Offbeat about L&D, where Offbeat started, where it's now, and where it's going in the future, as well as what I'm learning currently as a first-time entrepreneur. I want to tell you a bit about myself because I feel it influenced a lot of how Offbeat started and where it is now. So I was always a research freak. I am the person that goes down the rabbit hole on the internet to find really cool resources about the things that I am interested in. And I was interested in, 4 years ago, I was interested in L&D because I was a learning and development manager for an e-commerce company here in Romania. So I wanted to see how others are doing things, best practices, examples, cool articles, cool podcasts that I felt would bring me a new perspective and some added value to the work that I was doing within that company. So Offbeat actually has an interesting and peculiar origin story because it was 12th of March 2020, and it was the first weekend of the pandemic. And because I was, in my house, I couldn't meet any friends or family. It was all about staying safe. I thought, okay, what if I would share some of the resources that I found over the years on LinkedIn. I have never done that before. I was not active on LinkedIn in any way. I had a couple of connections, but not that many. I knew nobody almost in the L&D industry, but I thought, okay, what if I would do this? And I think there was another trigger for me to do this, and it was the fact that there was a lot of conversation about how do we as L&D professionals stay relevant in a world that's fully remote. And while that conversation was very relevant to the times that we were living back then, I still felt we followed the trend. And I feel like this is something we do a lot in L&D, just, find the new shiny thing and just follow it and forget about things that are very important and fundamental in L&D. So I found those resources. I don't remember what those were if you would ask me now, but I found those resources and I just made a list and posted it on LinkedIn. And the 12 people that liked that post made me think, okay, I think there's something out there. It felt like people needed, high quality resources. So what if I keep on doing this? So I did it for a couple of weeks, and someone suggested in the comments, why don't you turn this into a newsletter? Because right here on LinkedIn, the resources get lost very quickly in the feed, and it would be good for me to save them, keep them, and so on. So I said, okay, how would that look like? And the team at Nifty Learning, they helped me create the first landing page for the newsletter, the first design for the newsletter. And on 14th of May 2020, I sent the first issue. And I still remember we had 42 or 44 subscribers at that point. It was a very small subscribers list, but I thought, okay, this is something that I would really like to do. It helped me as an L&D professional to stay in touch with what was happening in the industry, with examples, and it made me, just enjoy my passion for research as well. So that's how Offbeat started. We started as a newsletter to curate content, high quality content for L&D professionals. And what happened since then, it's been crazy, at least for me, because I got access to so many amazing people in the industry from all over the world, and I got to learn so much from them. And I won't make a list here because there's so many of them, but if I ever had a chat with you, or if I continue having chats with you, thank you so much for everything that you've taught me. And I want to share some of the things that I've learned about L&D, and a small warning, they're not very granular. I would say they're more of an overview of how the industry operates and how we operate as teams, or even as one-people shows in our companies. The first thing is that L&D is way more complex than I actually thought. Again, I was an L&D manager in quite a big company. I didn't have a formal L&D background or learning education. And I think even at that point, although I felt L&D was more than what we were doing, I still knew only, managing training, sending calendar invites, gathering feedback, talking to stakeholders, and so on. So that's mostly what I knew about L&D. And the rest of it was mostly what I learned from some very good books that I constantly recommend. But again, my reality was quite simple compared to the world that I got to discover once I started digging deeper. And I think the biggest surprise, in a good way and also in a very challenging way, is that L&D is actually an intersection of so many different disciplines. And it's actually, of course, neuroscience, behavior change are both fundamentals for L&D, but there are other disciplines that can and should influence the way that we do our work. And I have to mention here systems thinking, because it's a lot about understanding the bigger perspective and making the right connections in our companies. It's a lot about marketing, because we can't hope that if we build it, they will come. I think lots of people say that. So if we build very strong learning programs, we should care about communicating them as well. It's a lot about product, because we should be working in a more agile, iterative way than we were before. It's a lot about psychology and so many other things. So I feel like L&D is so complex, which in one way it makes it very exciting because there's always something that we can learn. On the other hand, it's very difficult because it's quite hard to, definitely be an expert in all of these things, but also keep in touch with and learn about so many disciplines. And I think because L&D is actually so complex and it can be so impactful, I think it's also what makes it extremely hard. And yes, I have discovered that L&D is very complex, and I constantly talk about the ideal way of doing L&D on LinkedIn and in the newsletter and in the fellowship and in everything we do and everywhere we go. But the reality is that fundamentally, in-house L&D is still quite basic in the way that we do things. And I feel that's because we are caught in a very hurtful cycle that is extremely hard to break. And that cycle sounds something like this. And if you're an internal L&D professional, this might sound familiar to you. So you have lots of stakeholders, and everyone wants something from you. Either if it's an e-learning, or if it's an in-house designed program, or a new training, or a new facilitator. Everybody wants something from you, apart from the fact that you have your own ideas and projects that you would like to run. So there's a lot of input that an L&D team or professional receives, and there's very little time for reflection and for stopping and for doing the more strategic, profound work that L&D could be doing, right? So sometimes that ends up being an L&D team that's not that efficient and not that impactful because we are caught on this rat wheel, because we don't have the time to think about and to learn about how does the business operate, how does what we do connect with how the business operates and the business goals and so on. So we don't have that time, and we don't have the time to learn how to make these connections, because sometimes even if we know it's important to learn about these things and we know some of these things, it's hard to figure out how L&D directly connects to the bigger system that it's a part of. And this cycle is extremely hard to break. You need a lot of confidence to say no, to pause things, to say, hey, we're not doing things this way. And this leads me to my third lesson learned. And it's about the idea that power skills, traditionally known as soft skills, but I just don't like the term, are so important. I think they're important in any role, and they are important in L&D. Because as time went by, I realized that what makes L&D, impactful L&D teams work are two things. The first thing is the idea of adopting those disciplines that I was talking about and frameworks from those disciplines, like behavioral science frameworks and practices, systems thinking, strategic thinking, and so on. So that's one part. But the other part is having those power skills, like learning how to and knowing how to negotiate, knowing how to influence, knowing how to pitch ideas, having confidence, having courage to say no, to experiment, to break things. And while the first part, the technical part, is extremely important, if the second part is missing, that first part will never be applied. It's just gonna be lost, or it's just gonna get L&Ds and their organizations to be very frustrated, because we know we should be doing things differently, but we're not, because again, we're missing that courage, we're missing that pitching skills, we're missing those very important power skills. And then I think it's quite connected to this third lesson learned as well. The fourth one, it's about identity. And it's very meta, but it's about how we perceive ourselves as professionals. If we think we can influence business outcomes and we can influence, retention and people growing, then our actions will, and our outcomes will be linked to this identity. So we will get more courage, we will get more confidence to do things that lead us to achieving these goals. On the other hand, if we either don't reflect at all about these things, or if we don't have a strong belief that we can do things better, it is more than training, it is more than facilitating workshops, it is about behavior change and all of those impactful things, then we will not act in that way. And it's not only that we will not act in that way, but that identity will transpire also in the relationships that we have with our stakeholders. And it's going to be the identity that our stakeholders will have about us as well. So having that identity extremely clear is very, very, very important. And even when you have that identity, when you have those skills, when you have the right practices, you can still fail. And I think, even if you fail, that's okay, by the way, but I think that's because learning is so much bigger than an L&D team. Learning is about how the organization thinks about learning. So how the CEO thinks about learning, how the CTO thinks about learning, how leaders think about learning, because that will influence the way learning happens within the organization when we're not there, by the way. But it's also about the things, the baggage that people bring with them to the workplace from their childhood and what they learned about learning. And as you all know, unfortunately, education is not doing that well, at least in my opinion. I think there are lots of things that we need to fix in the educational system for it to help people have a healthy way of viewing learning. So if we learned in school that learning, it's about having a teacher that tells you when, where, what, and why to learn, then when we come to the workplace, we're gonna expect the same, usually from L&D or from our people managers. So we go into this childhood parent relationship with people around us that is not helpful for learning. So if you have these issues of, oh, learners are not engaged or they're not autonomous in their learning process, know that it's a lot about what they've learned up until that point about learning. And unfortunately, they're not the healthiest things. So while a good L&D team can influence both of these things, so how the organization thinks about learning and how people think about learning, it's a very, very long-term change. And it does require a lot of resilience and experimenting and failing, and we need to be comfortable with all of these. So, told you a bit about what I learned about L&D. I want to come back to where Offbeat is now. So I told you that we started as a newsletter, and I told you that got us to being connected to so many wonderful people and to be learning from so many wonderful people. And I feel like all of these lessons learned led us to some of the things that we need in L&D to become more impactful, or to take, that one small step toward becoming more impactful. And for me, it's a couple of things. The first one is that we need role models. And when I say role models, I am not talking about outside of the organization influencers like myself that tell you how an ideal L&D team should be run. No, I'm talking about real world case studies that tell you how other L&D teams or L&D professionals do things and how impactful they are, and the challenges that they encountered and how they failed and how they learned, and those transparent case studies that tell you the whole story, not only the pretty part of the story, let's say. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we do need to support each other. So I feel like there's a lot of power in the idea of one-on-one support, or one-to-many support, or many-to-one support in gaining those power skills that I was talking about earlier. So when you see someone next to you that's courageous, you might learn how to be courageous as well. Obviously, it's a very personal thing as well, but having that support system around you that shows you how things could be more impactful and shows you what you could learn and shares with you that passion for learning and for L&D will help you improve as well. Then, what I was saying earlier is that we are caught on a rat wheel sometimes, and I think as a society we need more spaces for reflection, and it definitely applies to L&D as well, because we do need more spaces for reflection to bring up the important topics to the table, to squeeze them and look at them from different perspectives and analyze them and think about why things are important and if they're important, if they're not important, and so on. So instead of just following the next trend, it should be also about reflection and figuring things out and how they apply to us and what are the next steps that we're going to take to improve our practices. And finally, I think it's a lot about having the right resources and connections. And for me, this is about curation. And I will go back to how we actually started. And we started from my need as an L&D professional to have high quality content, examples, and connections. Because if you, let's say you are developing a leadership development program and you're going on Google, you will get lost because there are so many resources, and I dare to say that 99% of them are not going to help you. So the idea is to get L&Ds that 1% of very, very good resources and connections to support them in growing. So out of all of these, right now, Offbeat is offering a combination of free resources and paid resources. We have the free newsletter, podcast, blog, L&D Trends Map, L&D Salary Database. So we're doing all of these, most of them with the help of our network to help L&Ds in growing. And the second part, which are the paid services, we are focusing on three things right now. We are focusing on our membership. So we don't call it a community, actually. We think that community is a byproduct of the membership, but it's a membership where we help people get connected to each other, where we help them access those high quality resources, where we give them access to high quality people and high quality conversations to help them grow. Then we have our programs where we get to focus on very, very specific topics. And our hope in the future is that we're gonna bring to those programs real case studies, spaces for reflection, spaces for practice as well, as much as we can, to help L&Ds grow certain skills. We're not quite there yet. There's a lot of experimenting that we've been doing with our programs, but we are seeing how we can improve them and make them really, really helpful for L&Ds. And then the third paid service that we're offering is our one-on-one mentoring program, where again, we look at the very, very high quality L&D practices, and we bring those people that have high quality L&D practices and also have a desire to share them and to help others grow, which, to be honest, is quite easy to find in L&D. But we bring those people, we have a pool of mentors, and then the L&Ds that need a more tailored, more personalized one-on-one conversation with someone that can help them with their career development or with a new project they have, they can come to us and we will curate profiles for them. So instead of just showing them, hey, this is a huge list of mentors we have, just pick from them, we're going to make sure that we curate the right profiles for every person's challenges, and we're going to help them decide who exactly is the best person for them to have a relationship with for 6 months and get help with whatever challenges they have. So this is where we are right now. There's still a lot to learn, there's still a lot to build, there's still a lot to reflect on and just do better for our subscribers, for our followers, for our clients. But we do have a vision of the things that Offbeat will offer 10 years from now. And what we know for sure is that we're gonna continue designing and iterating our digital learning services to make sure that we support each other in building those power skills, in reflecting, in just doing better in our jobs. So the digital learning services will always be with Offbeat, and we'll keep on improving them to make sure that we are adding the value we would like to add to the lives of L&D professionals. The second thing that we're going to do, and we actually already started doing, but there's a lot to build in there as well, is creating offline spaces for L&D professionals to meet. Again, we started last year with what we call Offbeat Sparks, and their purpose is to bring L&Ds from a certain city to connect and get inspired and learn from each other. And we're gonna keep on doing that. But there are also other offline spaces we would like to build that are more long-term, that are a lot about, again, genuinely meeting with each other and reflecting and, I don't know, eating together and networking and crying and laughing together. So you should be keeping an eye on us because we are planning on running more offline spaces as well. And finally, a byproduct of our newsletter and of everything that we've been doing so far is an amazing, amazing network of L&D professionals. And we know that they have really incredible high quality services to offer. And we know that L&Ds, on the other hand, are looking for those high quality services, whether we're talking about facilitation, about consulting, about having a peer that you could talk to, a mentor, whatever you want to call it. Those services could be offered by our network. So in the future, we're looking to build this decentralized network of consultants and curated network of consultants and offer together with them and with their help the consulting and facilitation and design services that we would have liked to have in the past. And this is where Offbeat will play in the future. And it's with some things, they're on the tip of our tongue, they're low-hanging fruits, and with others, it's going to take a very long while to get there. And we already know that, but I would say we are fully committed to doing this. And we are learning a lot in the process how to be entrepreneurs as well. And there are two things that I also learned about this industry while doing this. The first one is that there are lots of L&Ds who would like to do their own thing, that maybe quit their job or just have a side gig where they offer some services they are passionate about and they would like to run. And the second thing is that we do have a very big entrepreneurial network. So there are all sorts of tools and products and services that are handled by entrepreneurs in the L&D space. And it was very interesting for us, and for me particularly, to go from being an L&D in-house to being an entrepreneur. And it's even quite hard for me to say this, like it's hard for entrepreneurship to be part of my identity, but it is. And I want to tell you some of the things that I learned and that I'm actually still learning about being a first-time entrepreneur. So you have to remember, I have never done this before in my life. I had a couple of examples. I had a couple of friends who have done this, but I don't come from a very entrepreneurial family. And if you're in Romania, you know that entrepreneurship is not such a big thing as it might be maybe in other countries. So there was still a lot of things that I had to learn, most of the time the hard way. And with this being said, I want to start with something that everybody says, but I feel like you only get to know it when you're doing it, which is you have to love the problem that you're trying to solve. Because I'm not sure how it is for others, but for us, it wasn't, and it's not very easy. It is a very steep journey. And because it's a very steep journey, you need to be extremely resilient. And to be extremely resilient, you have to have a reason why you're doing this. And the best reason is the problem that you're trying to solve. So you need to be very passionate about it. And I can tell you, I'm extremely passionate about getting L&Ds to be more impactful. I feel there's a lot of lost potential in L&D teams operating in a very basic subpar way. So I am in love with the problem. I hate the problem sometimes, but I stick to what I'm doing because I really, really want to support L&Ds in solving their challenges and becoming more confident and being more courageous. It doesn't matter how I'm gonna solve it, to be honest. If it's not Offbeat, it's gonna be something else, most likely. But I know that I'm passionate about this problem. The second thing, and it is about passion, it's that, while I was young, so many people told me that it's so important to find your passion, to love what you do, and to not be frustrated, to not hate what you do, to not be bored by what you do. But nobody told me that passion does have a negative, unhealthy side as well. And I was talking to some friends in the industry that are doing this or are thinking about doing this, and we were talking about how passion can lead you to lots of workload and burnout and depression sometimes, and how important it actually is to manage your mental health, to make sure that you make space for other things in your life, because sometimes passion can be can lead to obsessive behaviors, or at least that's what happened to me. I was obsessed with making sure that whatever we do it quickly, we do it properly, we talk to many people, and you do all the things that you need to do as an entrepreneur. But in my first year of entrepreneurship, I completely forgot about myself and the fact that I had other relationships that I should care about, and the fact that I liked reading and going on walks and watching TV shows and movies sometimes. And it hurt me, and I had to go to a very dark place to come out of that very unhealthy cycle that I was on. So I think that managing your mental health as an entrepreneur is unfortunately not as talked about as it would be good to be talked about. But I think it's very, very important to hear those stories, not only the stories about hustling and about doing your best and about working overtime, 16 to 18 hours a day, not eating, not sleeping, and so on. I think there are times where you might do that, but I think balance is such an important and underrated thing in entrepreneurship. And then, because I was telling you about relationships, I think there are a couple of relationships as well that you need to work and manage and improve while you are as an entrepreneur. The first one, which was very, very interesting for me, was my relationship with money. I think, again, it's not talked about that much in entrepreneurship and in L&D, because I feel like L&D is this space where you want to do good, and learning is such a personal and fulfilling thing. And obviously, if I could, I would do everything for free, if you would ask me. But I think you have to manage your relationship with money and think about it. Think about the things you've learned as a kid, and think about where you want to go and how you would be happy with, the life that you want to lead, but also the money that you have in your bank account, because that is a very fundamental need that we have as human beings, which is to eat. So I think you should be thinking about that if you want to pursue this journey, and if you are already in this journey. And then it's about failure. And I think failure can come in many, many shapes and forms in entrepreneurship. It can come in the form of a failed business, which is very bad, but it's definitely not the end of the world. And it can also come in the shape of small failures along the way to success, or to failure, to a bigger failure. And I haven't experienced that failed business. I hope I will not, but you never know. But I have experienced the feeling of failing and failing my clients and my colleagues sometimes, and the subscribers, and the people that follow me in multiple steps of my journey, because I am a very weird combination of a perfectionist and someone who wants to deliver things very, very quickly. And that combination can easily get you to feel like you're failing, or actually failing the people you're serving. And I think snapping from that very, very bad feeling to, hey, I have failed. What can I do to solve this? And what can I learn from this to make sure that it doesn't happen the second time? Or maybe the second time it's a smaller failure sometimes than it was the first time. So I think having a healthy relationship with failure, it's very important, because it's gonna happen at some point or another. If you're building something bigger than yourself, either it's gonna happen or you're gonna feel it's gonna happen, which sometimes it's also a very, very different thing, I would say. And that failure can lead you to low self-esteem. And I can tell you, I remember just watching very successful people and thinking, oh, I think when you're there, you don't have an imposter syndrome, you're confident, and you have a high self-esteem. And it's not what I've experienced. And I remember actually watching a documentary that I really want to recommend you, and it's about Lewis Capaldi, the very cool singer, and it's on Netflix, and this is not advertisement for Netflix in any way. And he talks about the idea that rise to fame or success does not equal confidence and mental health, and it's often a lot about imposter syndrome and low self-esteem, and the feeling that people expect high quality from you and you cannot consistently deliver that high quality, because the end of the day you are only human and you have flaws, and you're gonna fail, and that's okay. And I have two more lessons that are more practical. The next one is about finding the right setup for yourself. And I was a very, very good individual contributor. I really liked being responsible for my own work, not being responsible for a team. I had actually never envisioned myself as a people manager. And once I became an L&D manager, it took me a while to figure out how the hell will I be a good people manager. But I enjoyed working in a team, but I thought it's going to be very easy for me to go back to being an individual contributor and working on my own, basically. And it took me a while to understand that was not true. I think for me, having the right people with me is extremely important. And it might be different from you. And I would spend some time, if I would go back now in the past when I just started doing this, I would spend some time thinking about what's the right setup for me. For me, it's definitely working in a team and working with really cool people. For you, it might be working as a solopreneur. And I know people in our industry that feel way more comfortable doing that. And I respect them. And I think it's a very, very interesting journey with its challenges, but definitely a reasonable one and a very cool one sometimes. And finally, and I think this is more about products rather than services, something that was happening a few years back, I think we've chilled a bit, is the fact that VCs, venture capitalists, and angel investors as well were just throwing money at whatever startups were out there. And this led everyone to be looking to raise money for their startups, even if they needed it or not. So I feel a very important conversation you need to have with yourself and with your team as well, if you have one, is, are we going to go the VC route? Are we going to raise money, or are we going to bootstrap 100% or just bootstrap at the beginning? So doing things on our own with our own resources, and maybe then raise money. For us, it was honestly a very easy decision to make for two reasons. One, because we are not believers in scaling things just for the sake of scaling, and we think that scaling in L&D and in learning in general, it's not always going to lead you to being impactful. So, venture capitalists are always looking for scalable things. So it felt like it wasn't a match. And secondly, because although this is very hard to hear, L&D is not the sexiest industry for venture capitalists. So it was quite an easy decision to make, but it might not be the same for you. So you always need to take a step back and figure out what's the best route you want to take, and what's the route that you need to take depending on what you're building. And actually, there's one last thing that I forgot to mention. This is a bonus, and it's about the people and the network you're surrounding yourself with. I think what made Offbeat what it is now, it's the people. And when I'm saying this, I'm talking about everybody who just subscribed to our newsletter, everybody who chose to pay for our services, everybody who very actively or very behind the scenes decided to support us, believe in us, and believe in what we're doing, our mission, and the form that we decided to serve the L&D market. I think people are so extremely important, and nurturing those connections and being thankful, and yeah, just making sure you give back whatever you can, or just ask a question, if you can give something back about what they're doing, how they're doing, if there's anything you can help with, helping them be their steering partner, helping them and supporting them however you can in return as an entrepreneur. I feel like that's such an important thing, because definitely, again, Offbeat would not be what it is today without all the people that trusted us in different forms and decided to carry our message further once they heard it. So I think it's a very good end to of this celebratory video and reflection video, to thank everyone who has been there for us, who is there for us. I truly mean it when I say we would not be here without you, and we appreciate all the support in whatever form it comes. We just appreciate you taking the time to share a good thought, share something on LinkedIn about us, just send us feedback, whether it's positive or constructive, give us an advice, make a connection for us. I so much appreciate you doing that, and I appreciate you, and we are here for you as well. And this being said, I hope you enjoyed a bit about what I had to say today. And if you would be curious to learn a bit more about any of the topics that I just mentioned, make sure to let us know, because we are willing and we'd be very happy to dig deeper in whatever subject you would be interested in. So thank you and happy birthday, Offbeat.